Today I am here at Burton Constable in Yorkshire. As you can see, it's a glorious Elizabethan house. And I'll be visiting the family who still live in part of the house, but also viewing the highlights of their very extensive collection. When I married into the British aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But it was also a little daunting. I became a Viscountess, and for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was quite a shock.
I live with my husband Luke, heir to the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset.
Living in a place like this is a joy, but also a challenge. And every day we're aware that we're preserving a very special part of Britain's heritage. Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all.
So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join this American Viscountess as I journey into the British countryside in search of some of Britain's finest historic houses.
Thank you so much for joining me here in the drawing room at Mapperton. I know from my own research into the lives of the Montague family how absolutely fascinating it is to delve into the historic collections of houses like Mapperton. You can literally spend hours on a wonderfully exciting journey of discovery. And many historic houses open their doors to the public to share their amazing archives and treasures. On a recent visit to Yorkshire, I spent time at Burton Constable Hall, an absolutely beautiful Elizabethan house, home to the Constable family and their descendants for over 700 years. In 1992, the Burton Constable Foundation was established in order to safeguard the hall and collection for the future. And now the foundation, with the family, work to preserve and share the wonders of Burton Constable with the public. In the Great Hall, I met up with curator Philippa Wood to find out more about Burton Constable's past.
So this painting shows it in around 1690.
Okay.
So that's one of the key periods of the house. That's when Sir John Constable had built on it and expanded it. The earliest part of the hall was actually a tower, the North Tower, just there.
Okay.
And that's actually from the 13th century.
Ah.
But as the family gained power, they decided they needed a bigger house. So they just sort of expanded it as they went through. And so eventually you end up with this enormous structure, and the courtyards were there, I promise. That's not just artistic imagination, but
incredible.
It is.
Absolutely incredible. And so who was within the family? Because I've read it's been in the family for, what, nearly 700 years, is that right?
Yes.
But who in the family decided to expand it? Was there one person in particular?
So yes, so that was Sir John Constable.
So he's sort of the one we can attribute to what we see more of today?
Yes, so he gained a lot of power from his father-in-law.
Okay.
And he became the Seigneur of Holderness, and he had all of this wealth and status in the county, and that's when he decided to really create this grand mansion for his family to live in and move here from nearby Howsham, where his family used to live.
Okay, fantastic. Burton Constable Hall is an Elizabethan gem, but I couldn't help but notice some Georgian features.
The Georgian side of things is from William, who inherited in the mid-1700s.
Okay.
His nose was out of joint because he had not inherited the title. His uncle, the 4th Viscount Dunbar, died without children, so it came through a cousin and then on to William. And so this, we think, was sort of William in a sense saying that he was still powerful and wealthy even though his family lost the title. So he completely redid the entire parkland, the entire house in more of a Georgian style.
Right.
Hence you get that door you just walked in, which used to be in the next door room, but it was moved to the centre to create Georgian symmetry.
Right.
Believe it or not, the entire house was painted sort of an ochre white colour.
No.
Yes. So William really did create an awful lot of changes to this house.
Yes, incredible. And those changes, what we're seeing today, have stayed then throughout, after the Georgian period, throughout sort of the 19th century. There haven't been too many other changes.
Not too many big structural changes. When the Victorians came in, everything was gilded. Everything was bright and repainted and reupholstered, and everything was wonderful. And we get a lot of ball furniture from that period, but a lot of the Georgian stuff does remain.
Right.
And to be honest, a lot of the Victorian gilding has since disappeared under further repaintings. Apparently at some point it became seen as unfashionable.
Yes.
But you will see when we go into the next room that we've still got some very bright colours courtesy of the 1970s family, some of whom I believe you're going to be meeting the family of today.
Yes. Isn't that fascinating? I see it in almost every single historic house I visit, each generation making their mark on the building. Today, Burton Constable is preserved and maintained by the Burton Constable Foundation.
So the foundation took the house on in 1992, so we're a charitable trust.
Yes.
But the family still lease the south wing, they're still trustees of the foundation, and our ethos is very much that we want to restore and retain everything, every part of the hall's history, and so the family are still very much a part of that.
Fantastic. There are over 30 rooms overflowing with family treasures and memories. I could not wait to take a closer look.
Yes, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Oh, tremendous, absolutely tremendous. So this is
the staircase hall.
right.
So this is the room where everyone either loves or hates the colour scheme. There's very little any in between.
I love it. I love it. It's because it's a showstopper. You walk in and you can't help but just pause. It makes you look. That's what it does.
Absolutely.
So it makes you. So tell me a little bit about this room.
Believe it or not, it's actually one of the later areas of the house to be built. This was one of William's additions, and its cantilevered staircase is phenomenal.
Right.
And it was actually painted this colour in the 1970s by Gay Chichester Constable, so it's one of our more recent colour schemes as well.
Yes.
But it's an absolutely phenomenal space. It's got some really lovely pieces of the collections in it. So it's got the Erard piano from the 1800s, which was a phenomenal piece even in its time. It was one of the best pianos they made. And then Lady Rosina, when she got it, decided it wasn't grand enough and sent it away to be gilded in Hull. So it's a wonderful collections piece.
And absolutely stunning paintings, and look at the gilt frames. It is very
Yes,
gilded.
absolutely.
And that's why I think I love this sort of, bright lemon sunshine color.
Yes, I know. I mean, it sets the room off beautifully, doesn't it?
It does
Although,
make me smile.
I agree. Of course, in the 19th century, all of the banisters were gilded.
Were they?
Yes, the cornices were gilded. Everything. They brought in Binks from Hull and just decorated everything. So it would have been you can imagine how colourful it would have been.
Yes. I mean, with the sofas in here, it still has this, in one sense, a sense of a comfortable place to sit down.
And that's something that the foundation really works on, is to try and make this place feel like home, which is why we're so glad that the family are still very much involved in the work that we do.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. Well, I'm glad you kept the color. It does. It makes me smile when I come in here. So where are we heading to next then?
So we're going up the main stairs, and we're going to go to the long gallery, which is much more Elizabethan appearance, even though, like the rest of the house, it was hugely renovated in the 18th and 19th centuries.
That was absolutely exquisite. And the long gallery. Yes?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Unmistakably, isn't it?
the ceiling is, so period-wise, this dates back to?
17th century.
17th century.
So this is one of the oldest parts of the house. This is actually a really fascinating room because of course it's a typical long gallery in that it could be used for exercise when the weather was inclement and the ladies could show off their fine gowns here. But it's also of particular interest to me because of this portrait here, which is Lady Margaret. And she was a famed recusant. She was always in trouble with the Queen for hiding priests and not giving up her Catholic faith.
Right.
So much so that eventually her son had to write a document telling her where she could and couldn't go in the house because he wanted to save the rest of the family from getting in trouble should the worst come to pass. So we know that Lady Margaret was given permission to walk up and down the long gallery, which always makes me particularly fond of this room, even when you take away how beautiful it is and the spectacular frieze at the top.
Yeah, the frieze is spectacular, but can I just ask, when was the frieze installed here?
That would have been done in the 19th century when this room was very much in use. So this bay here used to be used as a theatre, which is why we've now got some of the theatre costumes and some of their theatre flats in here, just to sort of set the scene.
Yes.
And then as we go on further down, there's another big bay that would have been used for music. So you'd have had a piano there and a harp and various other musical instruments. So this has always been in use right from the Tudor period right up until the 19th century. It would have been where people gathered. It would have been a real social place, a place for first of all exercise and then music and entertainment.
Yes.
So it would have been really a phenomenal place. Oh, and we do have a chair that was used by Her late Majesty Queen Victoria.
No.
So the family was actually of sufficient standing that when Queen Victoria did visit Hull, it was actually the family who loaned her pieces for her hotel room. So it was the Clifford Constable's silverware that was sent to the Queen's bedroom to be used by her during her visit. There are newspaper reports that say that she was going to come here on a hot air balloon, but I'm not sure how realistic that was.
Right. Well, you know, it's always a good story to tell. That's what I always think. When you have these wonderful historic houses, it's about how many stories that you can tell and, you know, whether or not they're true or not.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what is extraordinary about this room, though, as you said, it was, you know, you just said that it was a very much used room right on, you know, through, even to today, if you think about it, it's being used because there's visitors coming through, which is wonderful, and learning about, of course, the history of Burton Constable. But I think as the American in me, anytime I see long galleries, I almost can't believe that it was used for exercise. But that's what, you know, going up and down, especially here in England when the weather many times isn't fantastic.
Yes, I believe it's 22 times up and down equals a mile. So it has been counted.
Oh, really?
Yes.
22 times up and down equals a mile. Oh, I should challenge myself. Have you done that before, Philippa? Have you?
No, but I know the guides sometimes do if they're in here and it's a very quiet day. The volunteers will do that
We'll go
just
22
for their
times.
steps.
Each room you visit at Burton Constable has its own atmosphere and story to tell. In the 18th century, William Constable's passion for collecting resulted in an amazing cabinet of curiosities.
So this is all William Constable's cabinet of curiosities.
Okay, so William Constable, the Georgian, who we see a lot of his work as far as in the fabric of the building, also as a collector?
Yeah, absolutely. So he once described himself as a virtue. He gives a long list of his accomplishments that include astronomy, gardening, science. It's similar to a modern Van de Graaff generator. So it would have harnessed static electricity.
Oh my goodness.
And he was doing a lot of electrical experiments in his house to the extent that he nearly blew it up at one point because he was doing some experiments with John Arden in the Long Gallery and all of a sudden there was a big flash and a bang and some smoke. And we were quite lucky he didn't set the house on fire, if we're entirely honest. But no, he collected everything from geology to scientific instruments, telescopes, you name it. He was a typical gentleman of the Enlightenment. He just wanted to understand the entire world. He was a natural philosopher, to use their terminology, and he wanted to know everything. A lot of this stuff William would have learned about or collected on his grand tours of Europe.
Yes, of course, it was the big, everybody did a grand tour. I mean, if
Absolutely.
you were powerful and, you know, you would go on the grand tour to discover the world. Historic houses are full of surprises, but I couldn't quite believe it when Philippa showed me one of the highlights of the collection: the skeleton of a 58-foot sperm whale.
So we affectionately know this whale as Constable Moby. It is, amazing enough, the only real-life whale that appears in the book Moby Dick, in as much as it was stranded on the seashore not far from here in 1825.
Right.
Sir Clifford Constable decided to rescue it. About 10 years later, he finally got around to doing something with it and put it on iron mountings in the parkland, and you can still see the iron mountings leaning against the wall today.
Right.
It was a sensation. You got Victorian tourists coming from all over the place. You got scientists such as a gentleman called Beale, who wrote a book on whales, and he described it in intricate detail. We think he was a bit inventive with some of the facts, in that he described the ribs opening and closing like a fan, and we've no idea how they would have managed to do that.
No.
But either way, it came to the attention of Herman Melville, and he actually pretty much copied and pasted this, so much for plagiarism, into Moby Dick. So we have the only whale that's mentioned in Moby Dick that actually existed in real life.
So it's in here now, and are people coming to see this maybe as much as they did during the Victorian era, or do you want to do something with it? Because now it's obviously been taken away and it's here housed and stored, but for the public to see as well.
So we're really hoping that at some point in the not too distant future we'll get some money to make this room a better display room for it, and we will actually remount it on an on a metal structure, so that it looks once again like it's like kind of swimming in the sea.
Yes. Well, that would be fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary, though. I mean, I've definitely never seen a whale skeleton before, much less the one from Moby Dick. Visiting Burton Constable Hall is the most wonderful historic journey. From the beauty and drama of the staircase hall and long gallery to the incredible cabinet of curiosities. But at its core, Burton Constable has always been a family home. And the family still retain apartments in the South Wing, where I met Rodrika Straker and her son Jack. I'm in the private part of the house. I feel very honored right now, so thank you very much. And it feels very much like the private part, the home. And it is a bit of a contrast from sort of coming from the long gallery, if you like, into here. But this was the entire house. Burton Constable was your home when you were growing up, is that right?
It was. This was, to be fair, this was always the private side of the house, because when you have, as you know, a house open to the public, you have to have a little bit of you time and family privacy. And this was always the private side. And this room was the converted kitchens when my grandfather moved back here. They were, the house was requisitioned during the Second World War by the army, and the family moved out in the 20s due to not being able to keep it up. Family moved out to a smaller house for about 25, 30 years, and then back in the 50s, my grandfather moved back in and converted this wing for himself and his wife and my father's parents, and this was the kitchens, but it's a really lovely family home. Yeah, it really is. The sort of back part of it, and we're really lucky. Actually, to have had that privacy. When I was growing up, we were open to the public all the time, and it's all I can ever remember. And this was the proper retreat. You could run back in when you were scared by something or just overwhelmed by the amount of people who came for big occasions at weekends, when there was always a function on. Right, always. There were always people here milling about. And that, of course, was caused by, after the Second World War, many of these homes, as you just mentioned, Burton Constable, same situation, was requisitioned.
They come back to these homes, these historic house homeowners, they're in such a state, but also they've lost their staff, they have death duties, they have taxes. And that's when we really start to see this decline of the country house, these historic houses, because the owners, and I suspect your father was the same way, they had to start thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to repair the roof or restore the painting or the piece of furniture that's been in the family and needs to be preserved? These historic house homeowners started to open up their house to the public. And is that what your father he felt he had to do?
Very much so. He inherited here in 1963, my grandfather died, and my grandfather had come from a sort of the typical Edwardian born, been through many wars, thought about nothing else. Everything else was trivial compared to the life and death existence that they'd lived. And when the family moved back, I mean, Burton Constable had been neglected effectively, much loved but neglected through not being able to afford to do anything with it. And also, as you say, there was no workforce, nobody was around. Death duties, double death duties in some cases, had been neglected for about 50 years. And it had really deteriorated. So in 1963, when my father inherited, and my mother and he had been married about 6 months,
Oh my goodness.
They tried to offer it to the National Trust, couldn't afford to take it on. It wasn't viable, as you'd call it, I suppose.
Right.
So they couldn't give it away. They really couldn't. And that's when they thought, that's it, we're going to have to start to be creative. So they went to see Bewley, Edward Montagu, all of the houses that are just newly opened with great ideas. Do we want to have a zoo? Do we want to have a historic car collection? Do we want to have, well, what do we want to have? We're an hour east of everywhere. And where can we glean our interest? And it was really on the ground, weekends with interests like custom car rallies and traction engine rallies and country fairs. And that brought in 40, 50, 60,000 visitors a year, but notably only about 10, 15% of those ever went through the house. And it was, my parents recognised that it wasn't the house that was attracting them, but it was they that needed to be attracted in order to keep the house going and to begin the programme of restoration. And that brought a big government grant to restore the roof. And that's really where the tipping point came in the 70s, where it became potentially viable.
Right.
And they said, right, we are going to do this thing. And they worked for 30 years. Hardly took a holiday. Didn't really look up, I think, until my mother died in 1989. And then my father couldn't really cope because he'd run out of steam, ideas.
Well, and he lost his sort of lifelong partner, and it sounds like they were much a team, very much a team, doing this together.
They were, and they'd opened up to functions and weddings and you know.
Started a band, didn't they?
They started a band in the 60s called the Hullabaloos, and they took that to America. They tried everything, literally everything. And you're absolutely right.
So many historic houses needed to adjust to post-war Britain, and homeowners had to be inventive, with many opening their doors to the public. Burton Constable survived by the ingenuity of Rodrika's parents. But after the death of her mother in 1989, change became inevitable.
And so my father said, we must keep the collections of Burton Constable, because that which remains here does so simply because nobody's sold it. The house is a collection of you know, historic amalgamations of families.
Yes.
And that is fascinating in its own right, and everything that Philippa talks about is lots of generations of constables, but also whom they married, bringing in various different elements of those families, and so there's a proper story, a family genealogy story, which is evidenced by all the collections. So Dad always said, I do not want to sell the collections. This is the one thing that is telling the story, and then to keep the family in it, because they felt that that was the most important living history.
Absolutely.
As an educational tool.
Yes.
And sort of conserve the living as well as the artifact within it.
To secure Burton Constable's long-term future, in 1992, the Burton Constable Foundation was established. With this arrangement, Rodriguez's father did all that he could to ensure the long-term survival of the hall and its collection. And with part of Burton Constable remaining a family home, the living history continues.
It was such a relief for my father, because then it wasn't going to be a burden, what he considered to be an
Right.
unachievable goal
Yes.
for Jack,
Right.
who was by then 2. But he'd already
But he saw
claimed.
the potential.
Right, right. Of course he did, of course he did.
You're a remarkably precocious child.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. So
Yeah.
he, in one sense, had insight. He felt that, okay, this is going to be the best for the family and for future generations. Because you are still here, you're living here, as you so perfectly pointed out, and that's what I think is what's wonderful about these historic houses, and we're all, most of us living in historic houses are a part of the historic houses, the organization, because it's about the living history. It's the history that has existed in your case for 700 years. You're still here. And yes, the public can enjoy it as they should, but you're able to then continue with your memories that will be passed on to your children and children, and those stories can still be told. It didn't stop with your father.
No.
It's wonderful. I mean, I, of course, had a fantastic walk around, and just to see the history then, but also the living history now, and having, Jack here. And
Well, I think it's very important to have some guiding principles of sort of family values in terms of where you want to go, but you've got to move with the times. You can't sort of just try one thing and say, well, that's what we're going to do for the next 50 years. It's been very interesting for me, 'cause, as Mum said, Grandpa was always thinking about a few generations in the future, and I've grown up knowing I've been sort of tied into this place since day one, and it's been really interesting seeing Mum and Grandpa through the 1990s and 2000s, because they were obviously the family trustees, keeping a hand on the tiller, for the first 20 years of the foundation's existence. And then I think from my end, I've been involved very much on the fringes for sort of many years, and then more actively probably in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's really been fascinating to have these two very inspiring forebears, in my lifetime to look up to. And we're now in the fun part, because I moved up in September last year. So I've been in position, I suppose, for what, 6-8 months.
yes, not very long.
Not very long, no.
Such a quick learner. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but
It's terribly important for the next generation to just segue in really quickly, but also very, very enthusiastically, because the lesson from Burton Constable or any of the other historic houses that have made it through the sort of night of hell, relatively, is never give up, and you're much better placed if you're in occupation and you're indentured.
That's right.
To be able to see the point of why you're doing this, and what will come if you really want it to happen.
You look at the outside of these houses, you look at the inside of these houses, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to give it my all, or am I just going to sort of, occasionally just let it sit, do its thing, and when it needs to be done, something needs to be done. And I think some people are in two minds about that. I'll just sort of let it carry on and function as it is, and great. But I think the three of us can collectively say we're not in that camp to just let it just carry on and function as it is. We want it to continue for future generations, and that does mean thinking out of the box. And you're going to get some things right, you're going to get some things wrong, but hopefully you get more right than you get wrong, and so that it can carry on, and it is looking to the future.
a slight side story. My room is up there, and it's next to one of the more I say more haunted rooms in the house. And people often ask, God, it's really scary being in the house all on your own. I was like, and because probably about once a month or something, I wake up in the middle of the night and hear a door slamming next door, which is pretty unusual because it's it's alarmed and locked up and everything. And people go, that must be terrifying. I said, well, not really, because it's been a pretty happy house for 700 years, and we haven't had any sort of murders or anything. And it's probably an ancestor yet.
Yes.
It's probably an ancestor. And I was thinking, well, rather reassuring,
They're looking after you.
Exactly. And the fact that they haven't haunted me means that it's not going too badly wrong so far. So
no.
I think that's a good canary in the mine there. Yes. So if things start getting thrown about, that's when to start worrying. But it's that I think being able to tap into that sort of long line of innovation and passion for a place is very important. As someone who lives here and wants to look forward to the next generations, but also for the perspective of marketing the house to the public, you have to have a story and a narrative. And I think that it's this rather mad family that's lived here for so long is the only thing that makes sense, really.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for your time. But I just want to say, here's to the future for you, Jack, and now that you've taken on the reins. You've only been here 6 to 8 months, but
I'd say more of a joint venture at the minute.
But that's right. But
But
it's the both of you together. It's wonderful, and it's taking what your mother has given you, shown you, and using that, and then moving it forward. So here's to the future of Burton Constable. It's in good hands.
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Thank you.